Hey guys, welcome to another edition of the Detour Live, where we're going to wrap not just the Vuelta, the 2020 season, and the two guys alongside me are going to give their final reviews of 5 teams for this year. I'm joined, as always, by 4-time national road champion Johnny Turow, Olympic gold medalist Scott McGrory. Fellas, you're a bit of a slave driver, Iffy. Like, we could have wrapped this yesterday, but you're just keen to keep going.
Well, we couldn't wrap it yesterday. The bike race wasn't finished. We've got to talk about the last stage and who win on the women's race, mate. Hey, equal opportunities these days, mate.
Huh? Now, before we talk about the race, we've got a special guest, and he's a superstar podcaster. It's Mitch Docker, who's live on a train in Madrid, trying to get his way back home. Mitchy, how are you, mate?
Yeah, good, mate. Good. I'm just jumped on the train on the way back, and I can tell you right now, and I'm being very happy to say these words or have these thoughts, the race is done. It was a very, very tough one. And every time I sort of thought it was over, I just sort of got kicked in the ass and reminded by everyone that this race isn't over until we cross the line. So now it is done, and I'm feeling good.
Now, mate, I put money on the great man Magnus Cort Nielsen purely on the back of he was confident with his stage win. He won that stage in 2016. What happened in the final?
It was a bit annoying, actually. We were just talking about it then. Maggie's on the train with me now. I think it was one of those situations where we were really keen for it, but we had a few things going. Hugh was third on GC. He'd already won a stage, as in Maggie. And I don't know. I guess the commitment wasn't there. Like, if we didn't have anything, everyone would have really gone for it. We did our job, but it just didn't come off. And I think everyone was pretty content just to get home safely in the end of it all.
Iffy?
Yeah, look, a fantastic effort, mate. The team rode really well. And Hugh Carthy, he's looks like a Grand Tour superstar in the making. Fantastic effort.
Mate, he was great. He was really good. And we were literally just talking about it 2 seconds ago. We're talking about Hugh's comments were he drifted off the back on the last lap. And there was a bit of, not disagreement, but everyone was sort of like, Hugh, you should have stayed in there in terms of our team. You know, you had 2 minutes. But he said, look, yes, I had 2 minutes. And I wanted to make sure I got this third in the bag. And then in the future, I've got something to work towards. And he really went about the race really well, as really mature, actually. I think in this race, I saw him mature as a leader. And physically, I saw him do some things that I've seen developing over the last couple of years of knowing him. You know, last year in Tour of Swiss was like, wow, this is what this rider can be. But then he's put it together the last 3 weeks. And then off the bike, he's matured, like I said, as a leader. He's told us what he wants. He's said, let's get to the front. Let's do this. Let's do that. And it's like, that's what you need to be as a Grand Tour contender. You need to be able to tell your troops what to do without feeling, I don't know, not bad about it, but just having that confidence. And he really had that. And I didn't expect that. He really showed that in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Mitch, mate, look, it's been obviously an incredible season for so many different reasons. And while the Vuelta itself obviously was very difficult as a race physically, how are you feeling mentally after knowing that the season's done, it's dusted, it's over? You know, how's your head?
This was, for many reasons, one of, if not the hardest Grand Tour I did. Physically, it was a very hard race, but I think everything rolled into that. It was so late in the year. And if I had my time again, I think I would have just taken some time off in that lockdown. But we didn't know when we were going to be racing. So I felt like I was at the end of my tether physically. But the mental aspect rolled into that as well. You know, as good as social media is, it also reminds you of what you were doing this time last year. And it's like, I don't want to see that stuff. You know, I'm in a race with the bad weather. And this time last year, I was sinking beers in the sun, you know. So that was a hard element. And I tell you what, one of the things that sort of was a bad thing too was this talk about the race was never going to make it to Madrid. So you sort of bought into that as well. And you were like, well, we'll see what happens, maybe to the first rest day. And then that happened. Oh, maybe the second rest day. So you weren't really psychologically committed to the whole thing. And when it kept going further and further, you're like, God damn it, this is getting really hard. I need to commit to this. So to answer your question a long way, it feels so good. And I woke up this morning excited, even with a smile on my face, to know it's done. I'm going to get to go home to my family. I can relax. And it's been a stressful year. As everyone knows, whether you're a cyclist or not, it's been a really stressful, tense year. And it's going to be nice to sort of step away and just relax and not think about work, you know?
Mitch, you were talking about the mental side of things as well, and looking at, the timeline from a year ago and stuff. Does it make it even harder? You've got a lot of mates back in Australia, particularly in Melbourne. We're coming out of the lockdown now. We've got 0 cases for 9 days in a row, but you're about to go into some tighter lockdowns in Spain. You're not going to get back to Australia. How does that sort of sit with you as well?
That is also hard too. Like I am excited to be in Europe for my first Christmas, but every so often I think about it and think, it would be nice to get back home and see the family. But I think it's going to be, I think it is really going to be nice. And it's pretty much like the tour. Once we commit to it and understand that's what we're going to do, and it's going to be fun. My son's going to school over here now, so it's just something we've got to get used to. But I am definitely going to miss not being in Australia for Christmas.
Iffy?
Yeah, we'll miss you at the Bay Crits too, Mitch. I just want to say the Vuelta really needs to be congratulated because they did it so much better than the other two. Tour de France, well, it was the first one, but there were lots of problems. They didn't do the crowds very well. We just saw stages and stages of people on the mountains with no masks and all of that. The Giro were a little bit better at that, but they still had lots of little issues with the hotels, the quarantines not being really well done. But the Vuelta seemed to just get it right. The bubble worked really well. They kept the people away from the big mountains, and everyone there just said. After about a week and a half, we all stopped saying this won't get to Madrid. We started to realise, hang on, talking to you guys and all the different guests we had on who were there. These people are doing it spot on. So really hats off to the Vuelta organisation.
Yeah, I think obviously not knowing what the other races were like and just hearing from other riders or, just hearing about it, I totally agree with you. And being on the race, I was speaking to Alan Davis about this at the very start because he was on the race as well. And we were talking about Spain and what was going on, and it's getting dangerous. And we came to the conclusion the safest place to be was on that race. Because you're not going to supermarkets, you're not going whatever to pick my son up from school or whatever it is. We were just in this bubble, and the safest place to be was on the race. You're in the hotel, you're with your teammates who you knew were all clean, not positive. So in a weird way, it was exactly what I said, the safest place to be.
Mitch, normally it's a really good time at the end of a Grand Tour, particularly the last one at the Vuelta, because you get to go out in Madrid, let your hair down. Would have been a different environment because you couldn't really do much. What was the mood like after the race?
Well, you could. Actually, you know what? We were back in the hotel. Yeah, we didn't go out in Madrid itself, but we sort of had the whole hotel to ourselves. So
that's good.
It was a bit of a hotel sort of party, you could say, where no one was banging on the door going, you need to be quiet, because there was no one else in the hotel. So Maggie is a little bit dusty this morning, more dusty than me. I sort of did the Christian Bale and snuck back to my room and got some sleep in.
Now, Maggie, he's a classic when he has a few sherbets. He would have been in flying form because he's one of those guys that's quite shy, but then when he comes out of his shell and he gets a bit of Dutch courage, you can't shut him up.
He was doing his old trick, where do the crabs sleep? At the bottom, which means, skull to the bottom. And Hugh Carthy was a victim of that because he's got nothing on him. He's got no drinking sort of, I guess, sponge on him. He just went down pretty quickly after that and called it an early night too.
How did Maggie go with these viral video sensations where he was interviewing himself throughout the Vuelta?
He loved it. He loved getting all the feedback, and a few guys sent in some questions, like TJ and even Jens Kukelaar. So I think it was going pretty well for him, and he's doing his hotel reviews, and he's a classic Maggie. And like you said, he's super quiet, and you don't really know how to take him. But when he really lets himself, when you get to know him, he really lets himself out, and you really get to see this different side to him.
Scotty?
Mate, besides the podium position for the overall with you and the stage wins, What were the highs and lows? Like, what are sort of two takeaways for you? What was really good about the Vuelta, and what were some of the, I guess, the downsides?
Personally, you mean, or just in general?
Yeah, well, both, Bates. Whatever you want.
Look, personally for me, I didn't necessarily have my best form there this year. I think it was just, I was initially supposed to be riding the Giro, and then last minute I got left out of that, so I was sort of peaked up for that, and then was trying to hang on to this form. So probably the low for me was the last week when I was really just trying to hang in there, and I couldn't do everything I wanted to do. You know, I want to be there.
Oh no!
Their support as well, and my form wasn't as good as I wanted it to be. So that was hard.
I think we might be just on the outer skirts of Madrid, folks.
For me,
I think
just
so.
Can you hear me?
You there, mate? Yeah.
We got
You
most
must
of
have
it.
gone through a tunnel.
Yeah, I did. A high was the results, obviously, but for me, it was off the bike. And the team really was just like an awesome crew off the bike. And especially this time of year, that was the most important thing. Because it was so late in the year, the motivation was, could have been down, but we just kept it, and you saw that response on the bike. So I was so happy with our team, and it was just a fun environment to be in. Because if we didn't have that, this would have been a really, really long race.
Was there someone that led that? Was there someone from the admin or from the riders that was sort of really leading that morale?
Look, not to blow my own whistle, but I sort of really try and do that myself. Like, I'm like, if I feel that vibe going down, that's something I'm really aware of, and something I became aware of in Orica, actually. And the team doctor there told me about that. Peter Barnes, he pulled me up on it once, and he said, "Hey, Mitch, your attitude, it's infectious. So when you're not happy and showing that emotion, people really feel that." And so that was something that I came into this race with. I said to the boys, I used a quote that Steve Waugh uses, is, attitudes are contagious. Is yours worth catching? And I thought that's a really good thing to start the race with, because you can get in this really downward spiral, and like, it doesn't really matter, it's just me, but actually it does affect everyone. And I think everyone was aware of that. And once the ball got rolling, no one really dropped the game. Everyone was in really good mood, and I don't know, it sort of was a great tour because of that. The results contributed, and it was just a great sort of feeling the whole race.
Hey, Mitch, when we spoke to you last time, it was before the race got underway. You were still working out terms for a contract, but then news broke that Vuelta was going to offer every rider that took a pay cut during the COVID another year on their contract. I mean, chapeau in a really tough environment to do that. That must have been a real positive influence on the group.
Yeah, like I think it was really good of the team to sort of do that, and it was a bit unsure. He did say that when we got the pay cuts, but until it really materialised, I sort of didn't believe it. You know how things can be. You're like, oh, I really hope that does come off. But in the end, it did, and it's going to be a different team next year. I think it's affected EF as a company, so it's a lesser budget, but the team, I think, has got the great roots from the last few years, especially since I've been there, that I feel like, as you've seen from this race, it's going to carry on and come back to the strength that it was, financially in a few years' time. Well, I hope so anyway.
Hey, we've got a couple of comments. Obviously, Wendy Superfan, great to see you, Mitch. Tom, great to see you, Mitch. Sam says, congrats on a great tour, Mitch. EF were fabulous. And then Tomo says, well done, Mitch, for sticking it out and helping Hugh to a podium finish. And Tom also says, you've been missed at the Windsor Deli too, Mitch.
Wow.
We've got it. It's all happening. We've got another question from our mate, Wombat Breath. He says, Mitch, can you tell us about your future at EF, how long you roll, whether you'll try alternative program, etc.?
Well, like you just mentioned, I just signed for one more year. Everyone who was up for contract only was offered a 1 year contract. I think that's just more financials. They don't know what's the financial situation of the team's going to be. But I tell you what, like, it's just, I've got to sort of, I'm not exactly sure how much longer I want to ride for or can ride for. It's been a funny year, and my perception of cycling has definitely been warped this year. And I really just want to get back into the new year and sort of see, like, let's just refresh it. Like, I'm almost sure, like anyone in any walk of life, is just feeling like, let's just get this year behind us and let's just see where we're at. I really would like to do some alternate stuff next year, and I'm definitely not done with cycling yet. So I don't know. It's like that question as you get a bit older. Everyone's asking that, but you just got to come to your own decision.
Scotty?
Do you, just listening to you there, Mitch, do you think that there could be some problems next year if everyone's basically looking at the calendar, like once we get to January 1st, everything's going to be okay again, and next year the season will be fine? But if it's not, anyone that's, I guess, somewhat, mentally in trouble, that's struggled through this year and is looking at next year as being, the shining light, if that doesn't happen, I reckon there'd be a few riders and staff and people around the scenes that might, really struggle with some mental health issues. Is that something that the teams are starting to talk about as well, just to prepare for what might be another fall?
Well, they're not talking about it, but I totally agree with you, Scott. I think it's been a difficult look at all the guys out of contracts this year, and I think that really did affect the way we raced in the Vuelta. There was a bit of desperation around all the races.
It's another tunnel. Just hang in there.
How many tunnels out of Madrid?
Oh, I don't know, there's a couple. Come on, Mitchie. That was a good question. That was a bloody good question, Scotty. I want to hear the answer. Come on, Mitch.
This desperate sort of feeling, yet you're sort of balancing this. I can hear you guys.
Oh,
yeah?
Sorry.
Yeah, all good.
Yeah, all good. Sorry, mate.
Yeah, so they're not talking about it, but I totally agree with you, Scott, because I really felt that in the peloton this year. There was a lot of desperation, a lot of guys without contracts, yet people were juggling like that mental health, like you think. Like, not that it was spoken about, but you could feel it. People weren't just as easy as a normal year, sort of chatting easily. There was a bit of stress around. So I totally agree with you. And, I think like anyone, you sort of just hope this thing's going to miraculously go away, but that's not the truth at all. And we're going to be dealing with it for a long time onwards. And it's like the lockdown. When you hear it's 2 weeks, you think, oh yeah, in 2 weeks it's going to be all over, but that's not the case. It's just going to go on and on and on. So I think it's going to be something that's going to be, exactly like you said, it's going to be a big problem next year. Not a problem, it's going to be an issue, but no one's talking about it just yet.
Mitch, we've got a comment that I think is very true. It says from Simon Heavey, Mitch, Life in the Peloton, best cycling podcast out there. Social distance podcast, a close second.
Hey, what about the detour?
Oh, yeah. Third. We're on the podium. Hey, mate, I've got to say, you should be commended for that podcast, because you were there when podcasts weren't even like a massive thing. You've committed to it. You've done a lot to grow the sport. And, mate, it's been a huge achievement, because if anyone's watching this, I have no doubt they've already heard an episode. But what have you got planned for the Life in the Peloton over the break?
If you haven't heard it, you've got to listen to Hugh Carthy. I did him on the second rest day, and it's a fantastic insight to him, who he is as a person. And you'll just understand what I was saying before about how he's just matured, and he's very down to earth and very calm in such a high stress situation. So listen to that one. That was last week, released on Wednesday over at the Cycling Podcast. But coming up next week, I've got a special podcast where Swain Tuft turned the microphone on me. So that's something that I haven't done before. And I was out doing a ride with him, and he asked the question, why haven't I been on? And I said, it's not about me. But he said, how about I interview you? And I thought, who better to interview me than Swaino? So that's going to be my last podcast of the season next Wednesday.
Well, I will definitely be tuning into that one, mate. That sounds unreal.
Great.
Anything you want to give to Mitch before we let him go, boys?
Yeah, Mitch. You mentioned that the Vuelta was a bit of a struggle for you. You didn't have great form. Where do you reckon you had your best form this year? Where do you where was the spark? What part of the year?
Probably up in the mountains just before the Giro when I was flying. No, I was trying to really peak for Strade Bianche. And look, I normally like the hot weather, so I tell myself, but that day, that day was insane. And that just makes me think about the guys who won that race, how crazy they were, because that really was unraceable weather, heat-wise. So I think, look, my form was really good around there. I kept it rolling, like I said, for the Giro. And sort of that period there, I didn't do a whole lot of racing. I did San Remo, Strada San Remo, and then I did Plouay, and then the Vuelta. So it was difficult to try and peak up, but that was the way our team was doing it, only the World Tour races. So, I guess coming out of lockdown, I had quite good form for those first bunch of races, and then I just tried to hang on to it for as long as I could.
Yeah.
Scotty, anything to add before we go?
Just to say, mate, good job with everything so far, and good luck going through this next phase in Spain for you and your family, Lydia and the kids. It's obviously going to be a challenge for everybody. But I do look forward to having a beer with you and your dad at the Iron Bar when you do get back down to Melbourne sometime next year.
Iron Bar is open, apparently, so the old man keeps telling me.
I can't wait. We'll have to get into it. Hey, Mitch, we really appreciate you coming on the detour, mate. You're on a train. You're standing in the aisles, but we appreciate it, mate.
This is where I am. Look, I'm in the baggage.
Good stuff, mate. Have a look at that. No, I really appreciate it, mate. And all the best with the offie, and bigger and better in 2021. And we look forward to the next episode of Life in the Peloton, mate. You're a superstar.
Thanks, guys.
Good on you, Mitch.
See you, bud.
Cheers, buddy.
See you, mate. Now, we've got breaking news from Simon as to why we've been third on the podium, and that was because Iffy burping live on air put the detour into third. So
I thought that was part of the appeal, wasn't it? To the sniffles.
I thought that
burping
would have put us up stratosphere, but anyway.
Anyway, fantastic of Mitch to join the show on the train. He's an absolute bloody legend. So we really appreciate that. Now, let's talk about the stage. Obviously, I backed Maggie. Pascal Ackermann got the chocolates. Now, there's some great footage from Vallon that I want to run, and it was after the finish line when they simply didn't know the result.
I don't know. I think it's Aki. Anyone know? I don't know who got it. You know who got it?
Das war wirklich.
Sure.
Great footage. Now they've picked Ackermann up and thrown him in the air, very European style. Now, when I finished my last day with the Green Edge team, all the mechanics and that did that to me. But a few boys afterwards, I think one slipped a disc. So there's a bit of a weight limit on that sort of stuff. But what were your takeaways from the stage, boys? Start with you, Iffy.
Oh, yeah, look, a great finish. I thought that Sam just sat on the wheel just too long. He waited just that fraction too long, but a really good sprint from Ackermann. And what I liked about after the finish, when one of the journalists grabbed Ackermann and said to him, well, you're the best sprinter of this of the Vuelta because you have 2 stage wins. He said, nah, I really don't accept the other one. Sam beat me, but was taken off him for something else. So we've got 1 each, is what he said. Yeah. So it was a nice way of putting it.
Yeah.
What do you reckon, Scotty?
What's the definition of best? Is it is it the actual result of who? Because they know who's the fastest. When it comes down to it, straight line, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Quick Quickstep they spent a bit too much energy in the last couple of laps, which had them slightly compromised. Bora did a great lead out. They did what Quickstep normally do to Koenig, which is just wait a little bit and then hit them right when at the perfect time. That's what Bora did, and the Koenig guys got a little bit mixed up, following the wheels, and Sam had to actually step up from off his teammate, come around the outside to get onto Ackermann. It wasn't a big deal, but it could be, knowing how close it was at the end, to have to actually go out into the wind to move up by yourself to then start your sprint after that. It could have been that. That's all it could have been, was just that little bit
Yeah,
extra
well,
energy spent.
it's only a tyre, as I say, but it was great.
Yeah.
It was great stage. Yep.
Oh, great sprint. Yeah. And did you see third and fourth?
Great
Third and
sprint.
fourth having a bit of a go. Sort of it was Phillipson. Phillipson was trying to hold on to third, and as Cantor was coming past, it was interesting. I just listened to the commentary, and they talk about, they sort of come together. But you could see he put his elbow out. The old, you're coming past. I'm gonna try and push you back, and then got tangled up. But you end up finishing fourth anyway. But I've done that myself a few times on the track. You stick the elbows out a bit wider. You start trying to push the guy backwards. Didn't work for him.
Obviously, Primož Roglic wins another Vuelta. Here's his post-race interview.
Primož, how did you feel riding in Madrid today?
We were just enjoying. It was the last one to do before we finish this, and we did it. So beautiful to finish a season like this.
So doing it, was it even better than last year?
I always say every time when you win is beautiful. It's really hard. It's impossible to compare, but I'm just super happy that I could win to finish like this this whole season.
Second year in a row that you win one Grand Tour and you are on the podium of the other one. Are you now the best Grand Tour rider?
Well, I don't know. For sure, let's say I was the best in this Vuelta. It's like this, and still some races that I didn't win yet, some challenges. But first of all, just today we celebrate.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good job, eh? Now, what was interesting to me is I looked at the World Tour rankings, and you would think Primož Roglic would be on top, but no. Pogačar, 3,970 points. Roglic, number 2, 3,945. How does that work? Is that obviously Tour de France holds a fair bit of weight?
It holds a bit of weight, but Pogačar also won a few other bike races this year too. I've got some list down here. What he won? Valencia and something else. What else did he win? Another tour?
And from an Aussie perspective, Richie Porte finished 7th. So good on you, Richie. That's a big result.
But see, Roglic, before, he was obviously in great form and probably the favourite to win the Criterium de Dauphiné, but then had that little crash and pulled out before the end, so he didn't get a result there, so no points. Yeah. So if you added that, if he won the Dauphiné, second at the Tour, then the Vuelta, he probably would have been on top.
You'd have to call him Iffy.
Liège. Yeah. Well, nice win at Liège too, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I've put the podcast line out there, and I'm trying to get a nibble. I'm trying to get George Bennett back on, and I've said, listen, mate, come on. It's the last time I ask you for the detour, I promise. And I've got blue ticks, and he's on. Hang on. We've got a bite. We have got a bite, folks. George Bennett joins us live from the train. GB, you're a bloody superstar, mate. How are you travelling?
Thanks, boys. Oh, I'm dusty.
How are the celebrations?
Yeah, good. I'm absolutely reversing into Madrid today. One shandy too many after. But it's weird, because it's not that you finish a Grand Tour and you want to launch and go out or anything. Because normally the time you're just so buckled. But the thing is, you walk into the bus and the first thing you do is everyone has a beer, and then the chefs make recovery meals, but no one touches them. Everyone just gets out the Pringles and then everyone passes champagne around, and you go out for dinner, and then by the time you know it, you haven't eaten anything, and you race for 3 weeks and you haven't touched a drop of wine. So in my case, for about 4 months. So it definitely. I definitely knew about it about this morning when I got up in time for the train.
I want to ask you, George, what's your offie like? What's your plan? How long do you have completely off the bike now?
Well, I got into this discussion last night with my teammates because I've always been told you have to have minimum 3 weeks off, maybe 4 weeks, which is actually quite hard for me because I actually really just love riding my bike, and I've always struggled a little bit with that part of it. But although I found out a lot of my teammates, they only take about a few days off the bike, and they just ride for the off season, just mountain biking or do fun stuff. But I've always just been a month off, step out, do some completely different other stuff. Generally, in the last few years, it's involved in operations to try to fix a side stitch, whether it be getting some ribs resected or there's all sorts of different operations I've had over the years. But to be honest with you guys, this off season's looking pretty average. Can't really do anything. Go to Girona, the bars are closed. Can't get back to New Zealand. Not allowed to hang out with more than 6 people, so I'm going to have to get creative.
Mate, what are you talking about? You don't want to hang out with more than 6 people anyway.
I don't know more than 6 people.
So tell me, where are you at, George? Because when we got you on the second rest day, you were sitting at about a 2 out of 10. Surely after finishing your season with a Grand Tour victory, you had a big part in that. Surely you're floating around a 4.5.
Oh, mate, yeah, I've come up almost to halfway. It's solid 4 at least. I mean, it's not bad. I got to a 6 at one point last night. I was that happy. But it plummeted to about a -2 when my alarm went off. And I'm all right. I'm excited to get home. I'm excited that it's done. And I just when I think back of I was just doing an interview before with a real journalist. No, I was just doing an interview and it actually made me think about just how crazy it is in terms of I've just had the same suitcase packed since I left the training camp in July, and it's just literally been the same suitcase, and it's just been all that happened is for the Vuelta I took out some of the summer jerseys and put in some of the winter ones, and it's just been one big trip, and I'm just so done, and I'm just for sure, it all crashes when you get home and you have some time off, but I think it's the best thing that can happen, and you just really soak it up. And it's not until March that I'll probably race again. So even, Tirreno or Pyrenees or something. So it's really the world's the oyster. The world's my oyster at the moment, if I was allowed to go anywhere. So, yeah.
That's great.
Now, at the end of Grandies, mate, they always love, particularly when you've had a few sherbets, big speeches. Did Primoz give a big speech? Did you step up on a table and raise a glass and give some motivational words?
Well, we had a big round of speeches yesterday. I'll tell you who was the best speeches. One of the best speeches I ever heard yesterday actually came from a guy, Franz Martin, director of mine. And he won Antical Gold Race. He found out yesterday he was second in Milan Sanremo. But he did a really nice speech before the last stage, and he went around everybody and he said, he just stripped around all of us and said what he liked about all of us, and and it was all really nice, and it was,
What did he like about you, George?
You like this, Jonesy? He said, my quality was that I can be a nice guy off the bike, but I'm a real mongrel bastard on the bike, which he loves to see every race day. So,
it sounds like Johnny Trevorrow.
I was like, is that a compliment, or are you just, But he said that was important. I mean, every team needs one guy like that. But so he did this really nice speech, and then, of course we win, and it's all nice and stuff. And then we have dinner last night, and the next round of speeches. And by this time, he had done a real 180, and his contribution to speeches was that everybody then had to go around and name their biggest mistake they've made in their life. And, and it was a great night. It was really, really good. Probably one of the best, one of the nicest post-Grand Tour meals, because normally, you get all the sponsors sort of coming in and they want to be a part of the big win. I remember last year we had this dinner and we had bloody 200 people in this room, and
they call them coat tuggers in Australia. They just
There's one guy that had donated a sock once to the team or something. Just people I'd never. And last night it was just the core guys that were there that have been part of the whole thing, and we just sat around with good wines, and great chulaton steak, and just chewed the fat and sort of breathed out finally.
Scooter,
George, are you able to just shed some light on what was probably the funniest or the worst mistake from one of the riders?
Mate,
Or was that all in-house?
No, that's in-house. No, that's definitely in-house.
well, George, can you shed some light? Did you tell Primoz that you loved him at some point?
No, I didn't get that far. No, I never got that far.
Was Primoz emotional at all with the victory?
No, you wouldn't have. Just another day for him. He says about 6 words. He just says, I got lucky, and that was it. That's all he seems to say.
Good stuff. So, Iffy, you got anything you want to add before?
No, just George, thanks heaps for coming on the show all those times. I know you've got to put up with Jonesy quite often, but for me, it's always a great experience, so really enjoyed it, mate.
No worries, always a pleasure, boys.
One for me, mate. You did say you can't go back to New Zealand. So is that the case that you actually can't get back there, or it's just too short, you don't know about next year and you want to stay in Europe? What's the go?
Oh, no, you can't. The hotel rooms are full until January, I think. So I saw today they're opening up some more hotel rooms for quarantining, but at the moment it's going to be tough to try to do it. So we have a loose sort of reservation around mid-December that would get us in for missing Christmas, missing New Year's, and so we're really not committed to it at all. So at this stage, we're sort of not thinking too far ahead. Just see the situation each week and just be prepared to be as flexible as we can and go with the flow and just accept that it's a crazy year and we have to do strange things and that actually compared to other people, we're not doing too badly.
When you look at the positives, mate, you'll spend Christmas with Sam Bewley. I mean, does it get any better than that?
Oh, hopefully he cooks for me.
Oh, he will. I heard he cooked a massive paella for everyone yesterday. So,
yeah.
Hey, before we go, a few people saying, Ian Thomas, well done on a crazy year, GB. Ash Cameron says, thanks, George. Carolyn Harbeck says, maggoted. Final question from Carolyn as well is, how much weight does the average rider lose in a Grand Tour?
0. I always go positive, so maybe I'm doing it wrong.
Well, good stuff, mate. Enjoy the off season. We'll catch up with you soon on the Social Distance podcast. For everyone that watches this, flick over to that. A little bit more rough around the edges, but it's a good laugh. So we'll speak to you soon, mate. Enjoy the train ride back to G-Town.
All right, cheers, boys. Everyone. See you
See
later.
you, George.
Well done, George.
What a legend.
Yeah,
what a legend.
yeah,
All right,
he
boys. We might as well, Johnny, get your notes out. Do the plug for Mitchelton, Bike Exchange, and then we'll do your final reviews of the last 5 teams. Do you want to add
And
anything,
as you do that, I realised I've got a couple of other jerseys out. So I'm going to take the headphones off, so I'm going to change the jerseys again. So get into the Mitchelton stuff, Johnny. And then I don't have to listen to you clearing your throat at the start as well. So I'll take them off now before you start.
Okay.
Welcome to Mitchelton, Australia's favourite winery and a place of escape. Experience the history, the beauty and the serenity of the Goulburn Valley at your own pace. Looking over the vineyards from the iconic tower, staying at the new hotel, relaxing by the pool, look at it, they're gorgeous, recharging in the day spa at that lovely couple are, exploring the seasonal menu at the Muse, stopping by the Providor and touring their cellars and, of course, tasting their signature wines. Mitchelton has become a hugely popular venue for weddings and major functions. There's a couple of happy couples there. And, of course, you have to go down into the cellars and visit the Aboriginal Art Gallery, which is just world-class. You will be amazed at the quality and the number of magnificent paintings in there. And, of course, there it is, the iconic $10,000 Land Cruiser with the $2 million.
$2 million! It's cracked the 2 million, folks. There you go. It has finally cracked the 2 million. What a piece of art. Okay.
I heard that. 2 million. Wow.
2 million. It's finally done it. All right. It's time for a quick word from our great mates at Bike Exchange.
Look at this bike. You think it's just a bike, right? But it's not. It's a bike. 374 people are looking at. This guy, this girl, them, all looking at it. People from here, there, and wherever this is. People that are looking for a bike. Or just a piece of it. Amateurs, semi-amateurs, and pro-amateurs. This guy wants this bike, but with this crank and these bars. This could be the perfect match. But not this one. This girl has a bike to sell, and thousands of people might purchase it. Eyes on Bikes help grow small businesses. His, hers, yours, and the latest data and insights help those businesses keep moving. We are the world's #1 bike marketplace, with over 500,000 products and 900 brands, where buyers and sellers are brought together in a place where a bike is never just a bike. Bike Exchange, where the world buys, sells, learns, and rides.
Thanks again to our great mates at Bike Exchange. Not everyone is a former pro and can get discounts straight from the manufacturer. So if you are not a former pro, go to Bike Exchange.
Seriously, I'm seriously. You get discounts on Bike Exchange that almost match what Scotty can get as a former pro. I can tell you, they're fantastic.
Just on that, what is the going rate for a pro discount, Scotty? What do you sort of haggle for? What would you be happy with?
Well, I'm not going to say, but so the last bike I got was a mountain bike.
Just
okay?
don't say. You're just going to dig yourself deeper and deeper. Just let it go. Don't get sucked into it.
Yeah. Anyway, I wasn't a pro mountain bike rider, so it's hard to get a discount. I don't feel like I've got the legitimacy to actually try and haggle too much for something like that. But if it's a road bike or something, yeah, sure. Then I'll go for whatever.
Do you remember the day?
You're only a trackie, weren't you?
Did that too, yeah.
You get a discount on track bikes, but what are you going to do with it?
The thing with
go round and round in circles. That's what you'll do.
The thing with the Jaco Herald Sun Tours, that used to be one of the best places to get bikes at discounted rates, and I got steamrolled one year by it was almost like a gang tackle. You and Lorenzo Lepage. Remember, I bought that frame, and it was way too small. But you had some sort of backhanded deal. Did you get a chop of that from Lorenzo?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I think it was just ended up being too small. But that was the what was it? That was a stalk. That was a stalk, wasn't it? Yeah. So that was like we're talking. That's Tour de France, podium sort of level bike. It was an amazing bike, but it just needed to be a bit bigger for you. That's all.
You're talking about those final days of the Sun Tours when they were in Lygon Street and other places as well, where all the riders would just have their suitcases open and they would sell everything. They didn't even sell their jocks. They sold everything they could: bikes, gear, old singlets, socks, you name it. They sold it, and people were buying it. It was the funniest times. Yeah.
I think I mentioned it before on this show that the best ever I've seen of that was at the Tour of Japan in 2012 with Wes Salzberger. It was incredible and paid for his wedding. So good on you, Wes. All right, boys, it's time. Do you want to add anything before we go to the review, Scotty?
Yeah, well, I was going to say there used to be a big swap meet like that with the pros in America. And I remember hearing a story of one of I think it was like a Motorola pro, and one of his former teammates was on the other side of the hall, and he could just hear his teammate just going off at this person, and he discovered later that he was selling basically brand new kit, but heavily reduced, and the person who was trying to buy it and haggle from him said that, but you got it for free. Okay, which was a bit of an insult to the rider because he felt that, well, hang on, he'd put so much time and effort over the years, and he only got it for free because he was good enough to be able to train and race it that well, right? And he was yelling out to the guy saying, "Free, I paid for this in blood, sweat, and tears over years." Just trying to get an extra $20 out of it.
Actually, before we do get to the team review, Scotty, you sent through on WhatsApp some images of the Trump race. This was from 1989. Tour de Trump.
Remembering Donald Trump.
Yeah.
In more ways than one.
That Moulet on the right there for Panasonic, who's that bloke?
He's a legend. That's Hank Luberdink.
Hank Luberdink.
Luberdink.
Yeah.
Louboutin.
Good bike rider.
Yeah. He was famous. Remember, Johnny? He was famous. I forget who it was he put into it was a 2-up sprint at the Tour de France in the 80s, and whoever was trying to come past him couldn't get past him because Henk ran him straight into the barriers. And I still remember the commentary, and it was one of those like, Louboutin, like real disappointment in the call because he just chopped him straight into the barriers and dropped him on his butt. But you've got the guy on Donald's left. He was a bit of a dag because that's Dag.
He's a commentator, isn't he?
Yeah, Dag Lawrenson. Lawrenson. Yeah.
So 7-Eleven team, American race, 7-Eleven American team. So great win for them. He won overall. It was Henk that was in the Panasonic kit on our right. He finished second, and Eric van der Aarden on Donald's right hand side, who's superstar.
Great sprinter.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. He won like 4 stages in that race, but finished third overall, and was actually one of my DSs at Mappe for like 1 season or so. And obviously Mr. Trump in the middle, who that race no longer exists, and in another 2 months, nor will Donald, hopefully.
Well, he's still around at the moment, mate. He's got plenty of trouble to cause in the next couple of months. Don't you worry.
He'll burn the house
going
down,
easy.
Sure.
He's not going to go down easy.
All right. Well, on to better news. Let's do some team reviews. We've got 5 teams to go, boys. We'll kick things off with NTT. Open the batting, Scotty.
Oh, okay. I'm into it. So NTT, they had 8 wins for the season. 3 of them were World Tour wins, so not great results in terms of the big events. One of those wins, though, was a great one by Ben O'Connor from Western Australia at the Giro with that stage win. And that was the day after he ran second. So he backed up, a really tough day by winning the stage the next day, which was awesome for him. And a few stage wins from Nizzolo, Paris-Nice stage. He also won the Italian Championship, which is pretty good. So you've got to give him a bit of kudos for finishing in the Italian jersey, plus 5th in Milan San Remo. And Nizzolo also won the stage of the Tour Down Under. But because they weren't very prolific, they didn't do a lot apart from that. The big one was that Giro stage win. I've got them down at 5. What did you say, Johnny?
Yeah, I'm similar. I gave him 5.5 because I think I gave him an extra half because it's very hard to race a year when you've got that sword hanging over the top of your neck, Nizzolo, Italian champion, as you say, won early in the season. Pozzovivo, always looking to do something and never quite getting there. Same with Edward Boasson-Hagen. He's a classy bike rider. He just hasn't been able to just take that step we all thought he would. Campanart's same again. He's a good bike rider. So they've got a classy group. 3 Aussies in there, Ben Dybel and Dylan Sunderland as well. I was really impressed with Ben O'Connor, not just the stage that he won, but the fact that 3 other stages he was up the front and giving it a real shake as well. So it looked really good. So, similar. I gave him 5.5.
Yeah. So Ben Dybel's gone to Ben Dybel's been signed up by Team Yukio in Japan. So he came from like the Continental Series, went to NTT. That was his first time in the World Tour, and he's going to go back now to a Japanese team.
Have we had an update on NTT with the sponsor?
We haven't heard. So, it's only 2 or 3 days ago that the boss was saying that he was hoping to do a deal. We haven't heard anything. No.
As Trump would say, I hope it's not fake news. All right. This should be a high score. Johnny, Jumbo Visma, the Killer Wasps.
Well, where do you start and where do you finish? I mean, what a year. Primoz Roglic, he's just a superstar. And from the start of the year to now, he's just hasn't eased off all the way through. So winning classics, second the Tour de France. And you'd think to lose it the way he did, with the press saying he cracked. Well, he didn't actually. Today, Pogačar just pulled out one of the all-time great stages to take it away from him. But a great one, 4 stages and to win the Vuelta. Strada Bianca, Milan San Remo, one of the Grand Prix de Piedemonte. He was just I think it was actually George who won the Piedemonte. That's right. But overall, the team's just been brilliant. Wout van Aert, same all year long. Tom Dumoulin, Kruijswijk. I mean, I've given them 9.5. A wonderful year.
Same here. Yeah.
If they had won the Tour, straight out 10, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I gave them the same,
not
Johnny. I gave them as close to a 10 as you can because they just didn't win the absolute biggest one, which was a shame, but they won everything else. There was 11 days in yellow. So in terms of publicity for the sponsors, that was brilliant. And George, you mentioned George, he won Piemonte, but he was second at Lombardia as well, which is a great ride.
Yep.
So they did everything right, except, get on the top step. So you've got to reserve that one, half a point for the team that did do that.
All right. On to you, Scotty, Team Sunweb.
Sunweb. So this is Johnny's favourite team of the year, I think. But apart from Mitchelton, of course. But 16 wins from the Sunweb guys from 9 different riders. So it just shows the depth that's coming through this squad. And I did a couple of calculations, right? So Michael Matthews, who was a prolific winner, but this year only had the 1 win. Right? So it wasn't a great season for Michael. But he was 7th at the World and 3rd at Milan San Remo. So still obviously very solid, very strong. Now, if you take out, of the 9 riders that won races, of the entire team, if you take out Michael Matthews, who's 30, this is all, of the winners. So the average age of the winners they have, take out Michael Matthews, who's 30. So from the other 8 riders, the average age is 24. So it just shows how young, and Mark Hershey obviously younger again, but that just shows how many young guys in this team are winning races this year. So they've got a massive, potential going forward. Jai Hinley, of course, second at the Giro, won the Jake Herald Sun Tour at the start of the season as well. They won 3 stages at the Tour de France with, 2 different riders, great results there. But in terms of overall classification, it was Jai's Giro at the Tour and the Vuelta. They weren't in contention for overall classification so much. So I gave them an 8. Maybe could have gone 8.5 because they did have a good year, but gave them an 8.
Johnny?
Yeah, well, I don't need to go on all the other stuff because you've already said it all, but I gave it 8.5. Remembering they got 2nd and 3rd in the Giro, 3 stages in the Tour de France. They've got 5 Aussies in there: Michael Storer, Chris Hamilton, Rob Power, Michael Matthews, Jai Hinley. So, fantastic year. Luke Roberts, one of the great sports directors, cool, calm and collected. 8.5.
Just on Rob Power, has he got a contract for next year?
I don't think so. Not yet.
Sure. Cycling News did a list, and it was like the top 10 riders that are out of contract. And obviously, Aru was at the top of the list. Can you see anyone picking him up for next year? Because listening to some of the insights from Alan Piper and, his capitulation at the Tour, sort of like that classic kid that cracked the shits, took his bat and ball and went home. No more cricket.
Yesterday's hero. And he's toxic too, I reckon. So I wouldn't touch him with a barge pole.
Yeah. So that's got to come into play when it's a buyer's market. If you've got a rider that is not good for the culture, adios, muchachos.
Yeah. Unless they're a standout, like an absolute standout, and you could say, this guy could win us one of the Grand Tours, which Aru has done that before, but it just doesn't look like he's going to do it now. So I don't think anyone wants someone, that's got that kind of reputation.
It's actually got me a bit stumped how he ever did that, actually, because I don't reckon he's that good. So anyway, he did. So
that is if he's 2 cents. Okay, John, open the batting with Trek Segafredo.
Well, to me, it's all about the Tour de France and Richie Porte getting 3rd overall in the Tour de France. That to me makes it worth an extra point. Look. They're a great team to watch. They really do. When needed to, they get to the front. Nibali, I think, is past it. So Mads Pedersen, fantastic to watch. Get Wevel game. Bort Malema, well, he's had a few issues of this year, of course. Newsblood, Jesper Stuyven, he's great to watch also. Will Clark, another Aussie in there. Tour Down Under also, a great win there for Richie. So I gave them an 8, mainly because of the Tour de France.
Yeah, well, I think that's generous, and I gave them an extra point because of the Tour de France podium as well. But I started from a lower base, I think.
What do you think, Red Simons?
I've been
International people wouldn't understand that, but
no, they wouldn't.
Big show back in the day in Australia.
Yeah,
yep.
And he always marked everybody. I think at 2, wasn't it 2? He's standing.
Oh yeah,
got a
2 or 3. Yeah.
2. Mads Pedersen, 3 wins this year. Gen Wevelgem, stage in Poland and a stage in Bing Bang. So he was a surprising world champion last year, but he held his head high. I think he wasn't. Yeah. Like we'll see from Alaphilippe next year. probably. But still, he was worthy of the stripes with a few wins that he had, and he was in contention a lot as well. And Nibali, you said he's past it. He is, but he was still 4th in Paris-Nice and 7th at the Giro. So I wish I was that past it. But yeah, by what we'd expect from him, Grand Tour wins in all 3 of them.
That's worth paying €2 million for.
No, not anymore. So I started at a pretty low base for a team with a big budget like that, and it's only Richie, 3rd at the Tour, which was awesome, that got me up to a 7.
Okay. And the final team, Scotty, opened the batting for UAE Emirates.
Well, how good were they? 33 wins for the season from 11 different riders as well. So it wasn't all just about Tadej Pogačar. He had 9 wins, this kid at the age of 21 with 9 wins, including obviously the big one at the Tour de France. They had 4 stages there, Christophe winning stage 1 and then Tadej picking up the others as well. Diego Ulissi, 2 stage wins at the Giro d'Italia as well. Jesper Philipsen picking up a stage at the Vuelta. So stage wins in all 3 Grand Tours. And then 5 World Tour podiums throughout the rest of the season as well. So, they were 3rd in Flanders with Christophe, 3rd in Liège-Bastogne-Liège with Pogačar, 2nd at Strada Bianchi with Formolo, and 2nd at the Tour Down Under with Ulissi. So they were a really, really strong team. They stepped up dramatically from last year, not just because of Pogačar, but from the other guys as well. So I gave them, they won the Tour de France. It's 10 out of 10.
Yep. Johnny?
I wanted to give them a 10 because they won the Tour de France and for everything you just said, but I just couldn't give them more than Jumbo-Visma. So I gave them a 9.5 the same.
Oh, the same?
Yeah, 9.5. Yeah. Look, I know it's all about the Tour de France. They won the Tour de France. But
what more do you want, John? What more do you want?
I thought Jumbo-Visma was the best team for the year. So I called them equal, 9.5 apiece.
All right.
Wow. Well, hey, what about UAE? Also gave Colnago their first ever Tour win, which was extraordinary, except for when Eddie Merckx was riding Colnago bikes but branded as Eddie Merckx. And the first win for Campagnolo since 1998 with Marco Pantani. So a couple of big players in the cycling world. Campag not so much anymore. They're very much behind the other 2 big brands. But you don't get any points for that as well?
No, look, a great effort. And look, hey, Alan Piper, it was a beautiful story. Everything about it is wonderful. And I wanted to give them 10. But in the end, I just couldn't give them more than Jumbo-Visma. I just thought, you know what? They're 6 or 1/2 dozen now. I'll give them 9.5 each.
Fair enough. Hey, you know that Alan Piper, we talked about Tour de Trump before. Alan Piper finished 8th on GC at the Tour de Trump in 1989.
Did he?
Yeah.
Wombat Breath's got a stat for you. UAE, another team with great depth, 8 guys in the top 100. So there you go. Now, before we go, Vazzy wants to know, okay, Scotty, tell us about the jerseys. What do you got behind you, mate?
I was a bit slow putting these ones up. So there's a couple of things here. These fell off, actually. So this was the quality of the races that we have compared to the Tour de France, etc. So the yellow jersey is, you can see the Vic Health logo on there. So, Johnny, you should know what that is. That's a Herald Sun Tour leaders jersey.
There you go.
This was the team I wrote for, right? Break a mill.
Yeah, it broke.
So because of the zip, they had to cut it in half, and then that was stuck on. So it's still a little bit tacky on the back, but not enough to actually stay on the jersey anymore. So that just fell off after I hung it up. And I actually took that jersey on the stage that fit, we had a stage in Bendigo, and it was on the trotting track. So the dirt trotting track was about 800 metres around. Yeah. And they packed it down really, really tight. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, this is just stupid. We're going to have a dirt crit. This is crazy. And then after the first lap, I thought, oh, it's actually not too bad. It was fast and solid, and it was actually pretty good. We had a bunch of intermediate sprints throughout the stage, and that's where I picked up the time to take the lead. But as we got towards the end, we had 80 guys, I think, in the peloton. Those skinny tyres, every lap through the bends, was starting to dig the dirt up. So the last couple of laps, it was a little bit of two-wheel slide. It was a bit sketchy. So I sat up in the final sprint. The other jersey is when I rode for Tim Gerolsteiner. That's the points jersey of the Tour of Bavaria. So, which was one of the good German races, I guess. And I got the better of, and this is like what we were talking about the other day, John, about teams classifications. All right, so the points race, the points competition at the Tour de France, the green jersey, obviously that's massive. But as you go into, so the Giro, it's still big. The Vuelta, it's not quite as big. And then when you start to filter down into some of the smaller races, it gets less and less and less important. And at that one, the T-Mobile won the race overall with Rolf Aldag. Going into that final stage, Eric Zabel, his teammate, was leading the points classification, but they did not give a shit about it. So I got into a break, won the final stage, won the points class over Eric Zabel. So I can say that I beat Eric Zabel in a Tour's
points race
competition. Sprints competition. I don't have to tell people
that's better than a bike discount, I reckon.
No, but it was that result that bike companies flooded Scotty with offers.
That's what it
So
was.
huge discounts, 60% off.
They were giving me bikes thinking I was going to beat Zabel in the future, and of course I never ever did. So,
oh well, you've got that jersey, mate. Hey, Johnny, question from Caroline. When talking bikes, I was once told as 90% rider, 10% bike. Your thoughts, John?
Yeah, I agree. It is.
I'd say 95%.
95% rider, 5% bike. Yep, agree.
Yeah. Well, depending on the bike that I get, the cheaper the bike or the less I have to pay, or if it's free, then it's definitely more bike. Absolutely. But amongst all the bikes at the moment, if you look at you throw out the brands, so Trek and Scott and Bianchi, whatever, all these top bikes, the way they're all engineered now, it's tiny amounts between them all. So I think wheels are probably the most important thing of bike equipment. And of course it's speed, aero, all that sort of stuff. But it is very little difference between the top bikes now. The big companies make the best bikes, which is pretty much it. So, your Specialized, Giant, all these companies that are the biggest companies, they've got the best engineers, they make the best bikes, and there's very little difference between them all, to be honest.
Where's all your jerseys, John? How many jerseys you got in the kit bag?
Not many.
Do you keep much memorabilia, or you sold it?
No. It got buried underneath Cog's Cafe, I think, most of it.
Can you tell people about the Cog's Cafe disaster before we go?
It's a terrible story. Just tell
us.
Well, look, me and a character barrister who was my partner in the Cog's Cafe, and we ended up. It was an interesting experiment. Right down Beach Road there, and towards the end, it was starting to go quite well. So we did a deal with the guy who owned the freehold, and he said, "Look, if I can't," he was trying to sell it. If I can't sell it at the end of 12 months, I'll extend the lease. It was starting to go okay. He's right on the death knell. He sold the damn place to ex-Collingwood footballer ruckman. I can't think of his name. It'll come to me in a minute. Bit of a character, and another guy. And
Monkhorst.
That's her, Damien Monkhorst, and another guy. And they were going to build these units and everything, which they ended up doing. But I was over at the tour, and the guy couldn't get in contact with me, so they demolished it and buried nearly everything in there. And all I had to do was get in touch with Dennis. Dennis didn't do anything about it. So
I like how you didn't mention his name at the start, and then you go, all I had to do was talk to Dennis.
Yeah. Anyway, so
that's his last name.
A few of the big, framed jerseys and that I got back, but all the small stuff just got buried underneath the place, including my bronze medal, a few Aussie Road title medals and stuff all got buried underneath. poor old Kay's, all Kay's home photos and everything all got buried as well. So, yeah.
That's crook. That's crook.
Yeah, not real happy about it. But anyway, that's what happened. Cogs went downhill, and a lot of stuff got buried down there as well.
And you still follow Collingwood. That's crazy. I would have given up on Collingwood after that.
Ah, well, shit happens, as they say. But
Andrew wants to know, was it Dennis Denudo?
Yeah. It was.
It's just the vibe of the joint. The vibe of the joint.
It was. But I don't want to say, listen, I don't want to finish on that low note, because I want to say I've had a ball. There's been 3 weeks of we've had Tour de France, Giro, straight into Vuelta.
It's been more than 3 weeks. I think we've done 4 or 5 weeks. I don't know. I've lost. I don't know what day it is.
No, 3 months actually. It's been. So I want to thank you, Dan, for an amazing job putting this together. And Scotty, you've been an absolute superstar, and put up with us putting shit on you all the time, but you've been a superstar.
Hey, that's my fault. Don't worry about that.
But no, it's been great. I've really enjoyed it, and Detour rocks.
Bloody oath. And in terms of the future of the Detour, as we said, the best way to keep in touch is to subscribe on YouTube to the Detour Podcast. Just search Detour Podcast. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at Detour Pod. And as soon as we go live, you'll get a notification. So turn on your notifications, because we've got a lot of big guests lined up. And whenever we can get them, we'll just do a show. So it won't be your regular sort of Monday timetable or whatever. As soon as we can get them, let's do it. Because then, if we've got important stuff on, like dinners or an opportunity, as Dan Andrews says, to get on the beers, that's got to take precedence. That's got to take priority. We are coming out of lockdown, folks. We need this more than ever. But just to reiterate what Johnny said, you've been a superstar, Scotty, and it's been great to relive some of the old days as well, because there's plenty of classic memories in the bank there, for sure.
Yeah. We can do an R-rated version at some point, no doubt.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that wraps the Vuelta. That wraps 2020, but it is sure as hell not over for the Detour Podcast. As we said, subscribe, follow us, and we'll see you again very soon. Ciao for now.
This is the winning ride of the Tour de